You're listening to The Conversation with Model Mind AI, a weekly check-in with Angela Schultz and Loren Horsager on how to lead through change, stay curious, and get AI ready.
Welcome back to The Conversation. I'm Angela Schultz, here with Loren Horsager from Model Mind AI. In our last episode, we unpacked the power of custom GPTs and Copilots. And today, we're building on that with something every leader is asking for: clear answers to the 10 AI questions businesses are wrestling with right now.
Yeah, so today, whether you're running sales or finance or marketing teams, operations teams, the goal of this episode is to really help you understand what other businesses are asking and get some of the details that help you make decisions, smarter decisions as you're thinking about implementing AI, where to start implementing AI. So we're going to get into a lot of different aspects of that. We picked our top 10 questions that we've been getting asked recently. And I think we'll make this a series, probably maybe quarterly, where we kind of dive into like what's happening out there and the questions you guys are asking us. If you do have questions in the future, reach out to us, and we would love to put them in a show and just get you an answer on your question and how we think about it.
Fantastic. So if you've ever wondered where to start, how to scale, how to measure ROI without the hype, you're in the right place. So let's dive right in. Question number one: where are businesses using AI today? I see so many people that are developing committees or maybe taking some of our training, but how are they actually implementing and using the AI today? Any thoughts on this, Loren?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. So we actually are seeing, we talk mostly about the four big tools, and that's what we train on. So that would be ChatGPT, OpenAI, Claude from Anthropic, and Gemini from Google, and who am I missing here?
Perplexity?
Copilot
Copilot.
from Microsoft.
Sure.
But we see a lot of other tools being used. And so I think we kind of need to break down the types of tools, right? And all of these tools have a little bit different perspective on what they're good at or what they're not good at. So if we think about everything I just mentioned, these are all chat tools. So these are tools you're going to go have a conversation and it's going to do something. Now, they each have different skills. I would say those four, they all leapfrog each other on and off as new models come out, but they're all at the top of their game most of the time. And we all hear stories of they push something out and it takes a little bit, like the GPT-5 will out. The first day I thought it worked great. I had other people that thought it worked terrible. The next day it was terrible for me. So, and then by about 3 days later, it was pretty good, and it's been working quite well since then. So when they roll out these new models, it does take a little bit, but chat is only one way to look at this. There's a lot of other chat tools out there. One of them that we hear about a lot is Perplexity. And we also hear about Grok, which is another large language model. But Perplexity is an interesting one. It is really designed for writing, right? So it has a very focused context on what it's meant to do versus a standard large language model that can kind of do anything, right? So there are some different ones if you need to do lots of research, if you need to do marketing content, if you want to do automation, there's specific models for that. So it more comes down to the model you're choosing for the problem. But when we look at it from a tools perspective, there are tools all over the place. And for most business users, you're probably using the tools you're already using and then augmenting it a little bit with maybe a workflow engine or something like that, or agents. But you're probably using the tools. For example, let's say you have an ERP system and now they're adding some AI capabilities to that. You're leveraging AI in those tools that you're already using. So, and honestly, that's the best way to use AI. That plus chat is kind of our view, is you're using the tools you already use plus chat. One of the questions we'll get to a little bit down the way here is, how do I make a decision on what tool to purchase? And that's a pretty interesting question in an AI world, because it gets a lot more complicated, and we'll come back to that in a second. But there's lots of tools for different areas as we get into things like video. We use Descript a lot. We're very happy using Descript for editing, but it depends. What are the capabilities around video that you need? There's a lot of other tools and they all work a lot differently. So I think it depends on the use case specifically to what you're trying to do. And then you need to go out and do some research. Most of these tools have trials that you can test them out. And as you're thinking about, implementing something, you really have to do that because number one, they're changing so quickly. I would not commit to, hey, we're going to sign off on this tool for the next 5 years because honestly, in 2 months, you might want to change the tool. Obviously, there's a learning curve on each of those times, but that's really how fast these tools are changing. That is kind of complicating that process. So,
Just to tag on to that, I agree with you. Each tool, it's like a toolbox, right? You grab the right tool for the job that you need. And I agree, they all have their areas of strengths that they're designed for. But I also think that no matter what tool you're using, there is a bit of a universal language that's coming out. So even if you're not comfortable with ChatGPT, you've only ever used Grok, I think it's safe to say that a lot of those skill sets are going to play well with all of these platforms. And so it's about educating yourself on how to interact with AI and then being able to apply that to whichever tool it is that you have access to, whether it be through your company or through your personal usage. I think just getting comfortable and learning how to extract the best from all of these is really important as well.
learning how to have a conversation.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think it's weird. We live in a human world, but when it comes to this ability to talk to our AIs, it's it's fun to see the light bulbs go off in class when people kind of grasp like the way in order to have a smart conversation with AI and what it means to do that and how you're managing the conversation in lots of ways that we don't really consciously think about usually when we're just having a normal conversation, or a lot of us don't. So I think it's an interesting perspective that there is that learning process. So when it comes to any chat tools, I will also say as we get into this agent world, that same process is really critical, right? Because you're going to be talking to these agents in a lot of ways. They might also be doing automated steps, but you also want to be able to talk to them because that's how you're going to interact with them. So that process of learning to prompt or one of the terms I've heard more recently, rather than like we've talked about prompt engineering, it's really context engineering, right? And so it's not a single prompt. It's about like what is the conversation? What is the information that's needed? What are the instructions that needed? It's that whole process of learning context engineering as part of how to interact with these AIs. So that's an interesting thing, and I think we teach that really well in our classes.
I was just going to say, we just had a course this week and it came up in conversation. I actually showed them this kind of wild document you gave me at one point of how to build context when creating an agent. And I actually showed it in class, even though it was a little bit technical. But what it did is it reiterated the fact that all the prompting techniques we talked about in class and all of the good instructions that we're putting into our custom agents, or excuse me, our Copilot agents or our custom GPTs was really mirrored in this agent context as well. And it got everybody excited because it showed like these small steps along the way are really leading to something bigger. And even if you never build your own agent, you will probably be working or managing an agent. So to understand kind of how it's made and how it thinks and how it operates is
Right.
possible in just using something as simple as ChatGPT. So when we ask the question, where are businesses using AI today? I think the key there for me is, are you using it? Because you've got to start at the ground level of just these simple engagements and this learning how to extract the key information that is really going to help you is what's so valuable at this point so that you don't get left behind in the future.
I think that's so true. And I will say the other thing we've seen a lot of change just over the last maybe 2 months or so. We are seeing a lot more companies start to build out AI driven workflows. And implementing AI agents. And 2025, they're calling it the year of agents. And like, what does that mean? Everything we're building on is setting us up for agents, and all these tools are getting set up for agents. So whether you're 100% right that it's like we need to have the understanding of how to dialogue, how to have these conversations to get what we want, to get accurate answers, get the results we want. But all of that builds towards both our workflows and our agent processes, which is we are starting to see more, as we ask about, what are businesses doing today? We are starting to see more and more businesses roll out workflows and agents. Agents are pretty new. Workflows have been around a long time. So this isn't really it's just become a lot easier, and we can do more things. If you think about, I give the analogy, let's say you have a 50-step process, but every third step requires a human to make a decision. There's no point in automating that, right? Because a human has to do all these steps. Well, what if we only had a human maybe check in on step 25 and step 50 to validate, provide some feedback? Well, now that suddenly becomes really valuable to automate that process, and the AI can do the human steps and the other parts of that process. Well, the great thing about that is when we replace that with a human step, or a human step with an AI step, it might not just be one step anymore, right? We might have to create something, validate it, check it, like have multiple steps in there. But the AI can do all that, which makes those processes worth automating, and we can build these crazy cool efficiencies out of doing things like that. So I just think it's a different way of thinking. But so if we back up and answer the question, what are they doing today? Businesses are basically using chat tools. They're using some specific tools. They're using the tools they're already using. They're starting to build workflows and starting to build agents. And that's really the path we've been taking people on our training from a non-technical perspective, right?
Yeah.
Because there are some technical pieces to this that you have to get IT involved potentially, but for the most part, our goal is how do you get your average business user to be able to do and execute on these things, because that's where it becomes valuable. They can understand it. They can tweak it over time. It's not a massive, months-long project to implement something. It's like, hey, let's try this today. Let's see if it works, and be running it tomorrow, right? Or later today, honestly. So.
I mean, I think that's why these AI tools became so popular so fast, is that they are approachable to the non-technical person, which is phenomenal. Okay,
Right.
Question 2. What AI tools or apps are best for what?
Yeah, so this kind of gets into our previous question, but
Yeah.
I think the thing to think about here is most of the companies we see, they're picking a chat tool. So if you're on Microsoft, you're likely going to pick Copilot. We see a lot of Copilot. Okay, so let me stop there. So that becomes your chat tool. Now, we see, like we've talked to law firms that are choosing a common chat tool like a GPT or a Copilot, and then they're also choosing a legal chat tool where they're signing off on. There's several different tools that they can implement there, and you might have the same thing in your industry where there's lots of data sources that are going to have a chat tool around that, and that's your way of interfacing with that information. So that's one aspect, but you have to think through like where are the gaps that we need an AI can fall into place. The other place is thinking about all those tools that you're already using and what AI are they providing, or what interfaces are they providing that you can build your own chat in front of that. So let's take an ERP solution, and let's just take QuickBooks, because a lot of our audience is probably using QuickBooks, or maybe you have something more complicated. But what we're always looking for, and I've been telling people this for 20 years as we consult with people, is make sure you're implementing products that have a good API interface, right? Well, that's your way of connecting to that system. Well, if it has a good interface, we can now hook that up to AI. So maybe we build out our own chat in front of QuickBooks to actually help us. We can choose what functionality we give it out. It's not all QuickBooks, but we can determine that. And now we can interact with that or give other people in our organization access to say, hey, you can use this tool to quickly look up an invoice or find an expense or things like that you might be able to do. So we have ways of doing integration, even if those tools aren't providing an AI solution on top of it yet. Again, another great example is your CRM. Like, what does your CRM do? And now a lot of these CRMs are building AI in front of that. We're finding some gaps in that, but they have the capability and the API, so we can build our own chat interface in front of it and now give these capabilities to our salespeople to actually be able to go out and use the CRM a lot more effectively. We can also then embed a workflow into the agent, which gets really cool, where it's like, here, this is the process we execute. I can go talk to my agent and then have it go execute this entire process. Or, there might be a whole bunch of things that we want to happen at the same time.
Okay, so if you were forced to only use 3 tools today, what 3 tools would you use just for today?
Oh my! See, so that's an impossible thing to answer. Well, I can tell you mine, but mine
Sure.
are not going to be what almost anybody else's are. So
Sure.
I love ChatGPT. I live in it more than Copilot. We have access to all these, and so I really really like it. The tool I am just really enjoying working with lately is called Cursor. And Cursor is an agent system that I can then point at. I actually use Claude or I use GPT-5, but it helps you write code. And this has just been a really, really fun tool. And it's taken a little bit to figure out how to do the prompts to write. It's not like you're going into ChatGPT and I ask it for something, I got to take that out and put it in my code. And it's one step. This will actually execute multiple steps. So I'll say, add this library and I want to do this functionality, and it'll go out and make all the calls against my program and add things in. It'll run the code and test it and validate that it worked. So it can do all these steps, and then it'll come back and say, now that's done, right? So now I can go verify that it's done. But a lot of times when I ask it a question, it will run for an hour, hour and a half. Sometimes I've let it go all night and come in. I'm like, I have a big thing I want to do. Like we're creating one that I do a lot, and I'll start this like when I'm done for the day and let it run all night. Is I need to create an API for a system and all the data models for a system, and I have all this in a spec that we always start with, and I will just drop it in and say, create this, and here's the project folders and stuff. And there's lots and lots of steps to that, like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of steps. And it will go off and run for hours. But then I come in the next morning and it's like, okay, all this is done that, in the past took weeks or months to do, which is really cool. And so, but everybody has their own tool, right? So you're going to have a chat tool. Then you're going to have like, what is the specific tools that match your job functionality? And there's so many of them. If you're in sales, what is your CRM tool and how does that work? Or how can you build an agent on top of it to do the types of functions you need to do? I think that's the way of looking at it, is like, what's important to you.
I agree. So I'm a ChatGPT fan as well. That's my number one go-to for all things personal, professional. And then I do love Copilot when I'm in my M365. I know that some of these others are trying to build connectors so you can use them within, but I mean, Copilot, if you're a Microsoft person, try Copilot because it is pretty spectacular how it can and really add to just your questions, your
Yeah.
searching. I mean, it just makes everything so much easier in M365. My newest favorite tool is make.com, which Loren introduced me to, and I'm working on my workflow game. But you know what's interesting about it is before I even use the tool, it really forced me to reflect on what tasks I do, how I approach them. It created this really reflective experience that I think made me a better worker even without using the tool yet. So it's interesting to kind of try these new tools because it makes you rethink how you're operating. So really encourage you to use Copilot to save an hour and then maybe use that hour to learn a new tool that you haven't tried before. And they're
Mhm.
all now infused with AI. So if you have a question, you can just ask right there. It's having that answer at your fingertips, which makes
And
it
there's a
really
lot of crappy
approachable.
tools out there. So just be aware that you do have to test it. And that's one of the questions we get asked a lot is, how do I, see if I should use this or that? Well, it's all done through testing of like, what do you need it to do?
Yeah.
And you need to go out and iterate through that, do some tests. You don't have to spend a long time on this. You can tell usually pretty quickly if you're going to get good results. We do this between tools. We also do this between models, right? So if we're building out a workflow engine, a workflow process for a client, and cost is an impact, right? So do I need GPT-5, to analyze this, or can I use a much cheaper, maybe it's 5 mini that can actually make this decision and run at, a 50th of the cost, right? And faster performance. So you have to balance all these things for the value of it. And there's a lot of crappy tools out there. So make sure you choose a tool that actually will get done what you need to do. The other thing about tools, there's so many of these tools that are getting created right now. And if you try a tool and you're like, this is what I need to solve for, but it doesn't quite work how I think about this, there's probably another tool out there that might shift how it looks at it. And it's worth exploring, the different tools to see so that you get the right perspective of the tool. As an example, like we use make.com a lot, which is a workflow engine. Well, probably the big one everybody's talking about right now is N8N. You can run this locally. It's an open source tool. And I actually really like this tool, but I really don't like working in it because it just doesn't fit my mental set of how to think about this and how to quickly design workflows. So I really avoid using it, where I really enjoy working with Make. So they're both good tools. It's like, pick the tool that fits for what you're trying to do.
On a smaller scale, when I hear you talk about N8N, I teach that in class as well. When I'm teaching how to build a Copilot agent, they offer so many templates or pre-built ones. You can get a GPT for just about anything, but the power is really in creating it to align to you and your preferences and how you think and how you operate, what role you play, what industry you're in. So by empowering these people to build their own tools is kind of exciting within the parameters, of course, of what's possible, but kind of an exciting time. Okay, so that brings me to question 3. Free or paid? Big question mark.
Well, it's not really a question at all. This is so important. Here's what I always tell people: if you're not paying for it, you don't own it. And so what does that mean? If you're not paying for the system, you do not own the data that's going into it. You do not own the data that's coming out of it. So I do a lot of speaking, and I was at an event one time and I told people this, I'm like, if this is the one time it's okay for you to walk out on me, and you should go. If you're not paying for this, you need to go. And this guy stood up and he started walking. I'm like, where are you going? He's like, well, you just told me I need to leave and we're doing, it was an accounting firm, and we're doing all of our stuff and nobody's paying for it. I'm like, you need to leave right now and go change that. And the other thing I'll say about this that actually complicates it is, what is your team doing? So are you paying for them to use it? And one of the things that we advise is that you let your employees use your paid subscription, even for personal stuff. So there's never an issue of, oops, I went to the wrong account and I put some data out there that shouldn't have been out there. So we would rather that you were covered and that there was no issue with having your data get leaked through the wrong account. So it's something to think about as you go through your governance process, but 100% you should be paying for this. The value is there, first of all, and if you're not getting the value, you should come through our training. But the value is there. It's well worth it. It's going to cost you $20 to $30 a month, depending on which account type and which system you're in, for the basic chat solutions. Now, the second part of this question is, what happens if you go out and you do a trial of a product? I would be very suspicious of any trials. Most of them are going to use the same system. They're using it, for production all the way through. But I would always be just cautious about that. I wouldn't probably put in production, data that you have that you don't want out there in a trial. And you really do have to go read, the end user license agreements and figure out like, what are they going to do with your data and stuff. We'll touch more about that, I think, on another question as well. So pay for it. It's worth it. And it has so much protection around your data if you're paying for it, but make sure your team's getting it paid for as well.
I will say, just from a user perspective on a free versus paid account as well, I kind of think of a free account as almost a whiteboard, right? You ask a question, you get your insights, and then it wipes clean. And a paid account, it's like a journal. It knows all your queries over time. It understands what you're thinking, how you're operating. It can almost work alongside of you. And I think that's where a lot of people will try it once and say, it was okay. Well, it was okay because you weren't getting the full experience of
Yeah.
what's possible. And the more you use it, the better it becomes. And so that's just another reason to pay for it versus.
Yeah. I think this is the most important point of the day is pay for it because it's the number one thing that's going to impact your risk.
Yes, yes. True, true, true. Okay, question 4. Can AI or Copilot specifically integrate with ERP, QuickBooks? What's this integration potential here with AI?
This is where AI gets really fun, right? Because what can we do with it? If we're just chatting with it, that's one thing. But this is the part we're so excited about at ModelMind, and so there's so many ways to integrate with this.
Mm.
So the number one way is, and I don't mean these in order of this is, I'm basically going to go from simplest to most complicated, I guess. But the first way is we can actually go out to, let's say we have Copilot or GPT. We can go out and create a custom one and we can add actions. And those actions are REST APIs, or there's a new thing out called MCP servers, which basically are servers into other systems. It's like an API to these other systems. So there's ways that we can just go plug into these other systems. Now, there's a little bit of tech that goes into this, especially around the security of like how is the security working with these different systems. But any pretty basic tech person should be able to help you through this process to do the configuration of this. So it is not a hard process. It's a very standardized way of doing these integrations. But yes, you can go out and build an interface to that. So now what does that mean when we do that? Well, that means if I go let's say I create a custom Copilot and I add actions to go to QuickBooks. Well, now I can go use that and I can chat with that Copilot and I can actually ask it questions about whatever I gave it access to. I don't have to give it access to all of QuickBooks. I can choose function by function, like what's out there. But I could say now, hey, pull a report on, outstanding invoices. And then the AI can apply on top of that and say, now, customize a report that kind of lays these out, or I can ask it things like that. I can even ask it what I hate is reconciliation, and like it can actually help me do that. So it's pretty cool that the AI can actually go pull the data I need from these tools and then use the AI on top of that to actually process it in different ways. So that's the first way of doing this. The next way is workflows. And the nice thing about workflows is it's a very structured process, right? We're defining the process and then we can plug AI in where it needs to be plugged in. But when I want to run, like maybe I want to run a month-end process it's going to take and just validate everything. Well, here's the steps it's going to go through. It's going to go do this. It's going to go do that. AI has nothing to do with this. Actually, this has been impossible for a while. It's just that AI, number one, makes it easier to develop because we can ask the AI how to create this in whatever tool we're creating, but we can also ask the AI, we can have that plug the AI into steps as well. So we can say, pull this data, now analyze it. Are we missing things, or is this out of the ordinary, or right? So we can add AI steps into our workflows, which is very, very powerful. So that's the second way. The third way is basically the first way, but more complicated. So it's basically this ability to build out more complex agents that can actually go out and make decisions themselves. And then based on what we've given it access to do, our ERP system, it can go make those calls. So from a business owner's perspective, this is pretty interesting. Over the years, what has been hard to do? Well, let's say we have our ERP system and we have our CRM system. And we want to get all of our customers, once they sign off on the CRM, they need to go to the ERP system, right? In the past, you had to map all those fields and figure everything out. Well, now what can happen is you can have your CRM solution trigger a workflow that then is using AI to say, here's all the data. I need you to go create a record in the ERP system. And you're not having to define any of this stuff usually. You just tell it what you want it to do. And now it's going to go place that record into your ERP system and configure it how you want to configure it. So I think it's really interesting that these integrations have gotten way easier because of AI, but like with workflows and with agents, but and you could kind of skip over workflows to some degree, unless you want this really structured process, which a lot of times we do want.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, I'm building out a workflow today. I'm attempting to build out a workflow today where when I'm training, I'm really on all day long. And so I miss all my team's communication, my emails. So stay tuned. We'll see how it goes. But I'm trying to develop something that at the end of the day, I receive an email where AI has kind of analyzed all my communications, determined what's important, what's not. I'm even trying to get it to draft some preliminary email responses that I can then click and say, yes, send, or don't send. I want to edit it. So I'm working on it, but it's really made me think about what I need and what I want, and the type of help that I could use going forward. So it's interesting to see all the different ways people want help. Everybody wants a different workflow in their schedule. So, that's interesting. So what you're saying is pretty technical in the terms of you really have to have domain knowledge of these applications that you want to integrate. So how about how to manage a third-party user of your data? Because now everybody's using AI.
So this is has landed me in conversations. I've had multiple clients call over the last couple of years where like, hey, I have this issue. We have a third party vendor that's providing a product, and they were using our data with an on-paid account or with or we didn't know they were doing this with our data around AI, right? And so one of the questions that has come up is, do I need a third party attestation to say, this is what we're doing internally so that you know the risk when you're working with some of these third parties, right? Now, when we talk about implementing some of the big products, like if, let's say QuickBooks with AI stuff, they're adding that, I wouldn't really have an issue using that AI because it's a big product, it's well known, and you can go out and check their license agreement, go through it, but I would feel fairly confident in that. Now, you go out and find a small third party company that's doing something. What are they doing with your data? And are you confident in how they're handling your data, so that your data, and it's not necessarily intentional. Like a lot of these cases I've been in are not intentionally trying to violate your data. They're trying to do something productive for you, but they did it in a way that they didn't understand the risk involved. And so I think, it's something that we should be thinking about either through licensing agreements or through like a third party attestation to say, hey, we are doing this with your data. We're not doing this with your data. So we fully understand what our risks are there. So I think that's definitely something to think about and should be on the radar as you're working with third parties. Because you need to understand, and it depends on the risk, right? If you're doing something that maybe has low risk or it's public information, that's one thing. But now if we have more private information, what are they doing with your information? I think everybody you're working with from a vendor's perspective, you should be thinking about this with, and it's part of our governance process as we're working through that with people.
The other day, actually, Loren, you said it best, and it really stuck with me. When we were talking about this, you said, if the company you're using, if something crashes and burns, the wheels fall off the bus, and if it doesn't make front page news, maybe you can say it better. But basically, if you're not working with a big company where it's going to be a big deal and make the headlines, then maybe consider working with that company Do you want to speak to
Well,
that a little bit?
I wouldn't necessarily say I just you need to talk to them to have agreement. I want you to work with small companies.
Okay.
I like working with small companies.
Sure, sure, sure.
You just need to have a clear understanding of how they're thinking about your data in a way we've never really had to deal with in the past because the risks were different. So I think you just need to have these conversations. And if it's a small company, hopefully you can sit and have a conversation and they can agree to something, say, this is how we're doing it. And you can get a mindset of how they're approaching data security as well. So hopefully, as they get bigger, it'll be in a license agreement stuff. But as they're small, you might not have that. So you definitely have to have these conversations with them and potentially get some legal sign off that they are doing this with your data, not doing that with your data, so you fully understand.
Ask all the right questions. I got you. Okay.
Yeah.
How about question 6? AI is huge. Where do I start for my business? This is a good question. I feel like this should have been the first question because it's really important. Where do you start? What's phase 1?
I think, well, I'm gonna refer back to our assessment. So we have our AI assessment. You can go out on our website and do this. It's free, but we have 6 different tracks that we think about, and these are all very important. And so I wouldn't say any of them are the first track, but you have to determine where you're at in your business and what's the priority for you. You definitely need to be thinking about governance. You need to be thinking about training because this is less an IT rollout and it's more of a getting your business users up to speed so they can really take advantage of this. And then it's things of thinking about things like, what is our AI strategy and how are we going to, what are we going to build out for workflows and how are we going to think through that process? What are we going to do with agents and how can we plug our agents that we're building into these custom agents for the tools we're using, right? So we've done some work with like construction companies, like how do we get our agent to actually talk to an agent that is doing design work, for example, or CAD work or things like that, right? So how do we make all these work together? So what I'll tell you is this is not you decide to implement AI and it's done. This is a process and it's an evolution. So we really look at this as like a 2-year kind of commitment to getting to a solid use of AI where you're comfortable with it, your team is using it, you've built out these processes. So if you think about it as a 2-year process, we like to break that down into a quarterly plan then. That's what our assessment helps you do. So now, what are the 1 or 2 things you're going to focus on this quarter in order to move forward? So a lot of times, we think education is a huge part of that because, again, we also think it's very important to have this knowledge in-house. You can go out and work with lots of AI consulting companies, and that's great. We think you should potentially. But I really think it's more important to have this information in-house so that your business users and your tech team know how this works and how you're going to implement it so that you can make changes on the fly and be quicker, more nimble, and faster to market as you want to add on capabilities. Because so many things this is a 6-month project that IT is going to go out and get, and we're going to implement a new tool. Well, now realistically, a couple of people on your team should be able to sit down for an afternoon and potentially build a whole, a pilot of a tool or a process that's actually going to change that. And in a couple of hours, you should be able to see results of that. So it's just a different way of working, different way of thinking. And yeah, so you kind of have to figure out what's important to you, but it ultimately comes down to break it down into these different 6 categories and then work from there, I think.
I will say to bring people along for the ride with you. Some of the observations I've made in classes, very often the leaders of a company will come and they're kind of the visionaries. They know how the big picture looks for their company. But where I see the most value is when those leaders bring teammates along with them. I think it creates this momentum and this excitement, and the more people that you can bring with you, even at the beginning, right? You don't have to have all the answers day one.
Yep.
So to be able to bring and have those conversations in the workplace with all these different levels and layers and people, I think is really important so that it has this not only buy-in, but a really good understanding understanding of what's possible, and that's going to get people on board for the long term, as you call it, a marathon, not just a training in a day or whatever it may be. So I think it's
Right.
important to build a community around it as well.
Yeah, I agree.
That seems to be something I notice in class when I've got a group of people from a company. They can't stop talking, they get excited, they're making plans, and that's where you kind of get that spark of curiosity, creativity, and ideas of how to
Yeah.
implement this huge thing that is AI. So great opportunity there. Question 7. How can AI support company growth?
There's so many ways. So let's just take a couple different areas. So that to most people that probably means sales, right? So how are we going to apply this in sales? Well, I think there's AI already being added to lots of sales tools, and you
Mhm.
should be learning those. You should be adapting to how those tools work to make you more efficient. Um, but I think there's also the thinking process of how do we want the process to work in an AI world? So, as an example, we've kind of stepped back and like mapped out our customer journey, and it's pretty interesting. We did this pretty simple process where we used AI to go out and research a bunch of people, and then try to do some LinkedIn connections. It is amazing. I think I've added like I don't know, I'd added like 176 new LinkedIn connections, which is really good for me over the course of the 2 months of trying this. And it's just very interesting. We've been having these conversations then with some of these people that are leading to work. So it's how do you do the outreach in a way that actually engages with people and then let the AI learn from that. So I think that's interesting. So there's tools coming to do this, but you can also go do a lot of these things on your own to kind of experiment to figure this out. So that's one aspect. But I would say in every area of your business, whether it is in marketing is another fantastic area, doing a marketing process for marketing content, quality blog posts, quality content that you can put out there, and as well as just looking at your website, which I think is one of our next ones here to talk about. But how do we use this to actually use the AI to actually improve all these processes? Operations. How do we build workflows to actually streamline things in a way that's actually going to take workload off of our team so we can do more of what we do? The goal is not to replace people because we've really learned that that's not how AI works. The goal is what can you do with the AI, right? So we're
Mhm.
seeing lots of cases where, okay, I can implement a workflow, but the person that still ran this process previously is still there and they're tweaking it, but they're helping the process, but they're able to do more than they were able to do before, and they're able to do a lot more of it, right? So now they can manage more of the process. They can manage it better. You can get deeper into that process, which helps you grow. So it's a little bit of a different mindset, but a human plus AI is where this is really, really powerful, even when we're building out automations, because those automations, you're always going to be tweaking a little bit. That's like the business architect part of this, right? Like we get to determine how our business is going to work, and we can try different things to actually improve these processes more than just here's my task. I need to go execute this and I'm done.
I couldn't agree more. One of the statistics I share with people in class is people are interrupted at work every 2 minutes by an email, a chat, a this, a that, right? And so part of what we do is we try to cut out the noise so that they can have that powerful time to think and do and create. So when I think of company growth, part of that may just be kind of eliminating some of this noise for your employees so that they can produce more and reach out to more clients and
Mhm.
maybe expedite a deadline faster than they thought was possible. So, company growth can be customers, but it can also be helping your employees grow
Yep,
and
yep,
have more time to develop, which is always a good thing. Always. All right.
exactly.
Question 8. What is the best AI for my use case?
Again, I think we've kind of covered this, but
Yeah.
basically, you need to figure out what you want this to do and how it should do it well. And then if you're looking at this and it is just a large language model like a ChatGPT, a Claude, or whatever, go test them, right? So go try your prompts in different language, in different tools, and then see what works best. Now, the problem with that is all these tools are changing, the models are changing, and so what's the best today is not necessarily the best tomorrow. So part of what you're looking at is what's the easiest for me to integrate with, what's the most cost effective, all these kind of decisions, right? So, and in my opinion, I think this is very interesting. In my opinion, I think that AI is there. Like we think, people talk about like AGI and all, like what's coming in AI. The tools we have from a large language model now, honestly, if they didn't get any better, what we can do with that is amazing. And it's the process of building out the things around this, the workflows, the agents, these capabilities, and it's the process of the tools improving to catch up with all that. The AI models are fantastic. And does that mean they're always right? No, but there's ways of dealing with that. So we can actually build systems that deal with that inaccuracy, actually improve them to where that's virtually 100% accurate by the time it gets done. Or it engages a human to finish solving the problem, right? So there's different ways of dealing with that problem. So I think that the challenge is pick the tools you think might work and use AI for that process, even start using some of them to do that. But then go test them and try the same thing across tools. And I would say the same thing especially about other tools. So what does this look like if we're rolling out a new CRM system? How does this one work? How does that one work? Like you got to go test it, play with it, because it's not just the AI response, it's the mental method of how that works and doesn't fit your business, right? The perspective it's taking.
We do this in class quite a bit when I hear prompt once and compare across tools. We'll even do that within ChatGPT on different levels. So we'll take the same prompt and try it in different models to see what the response looks like and feels like, so that when we are at work, we know exactly which model to grab. And now with GPT-5, they have personalities. So we will sometimes take the same prompt and run it in the different personalities that are available. And it's kind of shocking the different responses we get. So it really is quite within your realm of control of what you want your interactions to be with these AI tools, whether it's deep research mode or some sort of personality, conversationally, how you like to interact. So definitely now's the time to explore and see a button, click a button. If it's safe and if it's paid.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay, let's see. Let's move on to question 9. How to optimize my website for LLMs and AI search. This has been on my radar for a couple weeks now. I am captivated by this. What are your thoughts on changing your website to align to this new style of search that isn't so much a Google search like we all grew up on? Now it's ChatGPT searching for you.
Yeah. A couple of things I'll say. Number one, I don't think we fully have all the answers on this yet because they're figuring out. People have been trying to figure out how to get their products into training for AI models. That's one thing. Huge amount of work for what is the value. Maybe it is, maybe it's not valuable. I don't know. But what I'll say is just improving your website, just like if you're thinking about like SEO and things like that. The process has changed for that, but there's still rules around how to do it, and leveraging AI to evaluate your website and actually prove some of that, improve the content for what is supposed to be on that page, right? So all of those components, AI is a great fit for. There's also some great tools around how to actually go, find some things that need to go with that process. But ultimately, it's a process. So this is a question we get because everybody wants to figure this out. There's not a magical bullet. It takes a lot of work to do this still, but the AI can help you do that. And you can do it way more efficiently than you ever could in the past. So, we have used AI extensively in rewriting. We like to control the process. We like to really have a plan on how we want our website to work, but we use AI heavily to go with that to help us not miss things. to help us make sure that the writing amount of writing fits with how a search tool, search is going to look at that. So we just want, or how an AI is going to look at that. So we want to make sure we're embedding all the meta tags and everything else that needs to go with that for how they're approaching it.
Okay, I'm going to contain myself because I think we might have to turn this into a full episode because I used one of my deep research queries on this because I find it pretty interesting because it really shows a shift in how we're thinking and working is how these websites are working for us as well. So I just want to share one quick tip I found in the research I did. And I got excited about it because this is one of our design strategies for building out GPTs is the same strategy for considering how to optimize your website. And it's think about maybe 20 questions that your customers or consumers are going to ask that will lead ChatGPT or an LLM to your website. So your website should have the answers to those questions. And that's how we build our shared GPTs as well. We start with what the questions are going to be and kind of reverse engineer it to meet the needs of whatever the questions will be. So I was kind of excited by that and maybe
we need to make this like the game 20 questions in our class.
yes.
That's actually a great idea.
Yeah.
Fantastic. That could be a whole prompt of the week there. Maybe next week or the week after we'll do that because I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. I call them meta prompts in class because you're prompting for a prompt. So I call them meta prompts. Works pretty good. All right. As we're going, we made it. It's question 10. Best ways to use Copilot, and specifically, how does it play with Teams, which is such a popular app within Copilot? Any thoughts on some of your favorite use cases of Copilot?
Well, I'm just going to put out a couple things. I mean, it's integrated into Teams, which is fantastic.
Yes.
So let's just say, we had a meeting this morning and I want to go look up the transcript from that meeting and then ask for my to-dos that came out of that meeting. I think so it can do that, right? And it can give me a summary or a list of to-dos. When you hop on a call, it will, and you're late, it actually, like, here's what you missed. Like, you can do summarization of all that, those kind of things. I think what's interesting because of that in Teams specifically, it allows you to be more present because you don't have to take notes in the same way that you used to because the AI can do that. So I think that's all fantastic. But it really comes down to Copilot is embedded in every one of our tools. So I guess I'm curious, like, your perspective, and there's a gazillion things we could talk about of how this works, but it's automatically embedded. So once you're paying for Copilot, you have access to this. And whether you're creating a PowerPoint presentation, whether you're updating an email, whether, like, it's just part of your daily life when you're doing this.
This is actually the hardest question on the list for me because I teach Copilot. And so as you're saying this, like literally hundreds of tips and tricks are floating through my brain at the same time. I guess if I were to pick one that I'm kind of on a kick of, I feel like when I talk with people, they're using AI in an isolated setting. So they're at their desk, they're asking questions, they're completing a task. And I've really leaned into lately is using something like Copilot in a group setting or as another collaborative teammate. And so I'm really trying to have people use it not only for meeting prep and meeting recap, but during the meeting, what questions could you ask or how could you lean on Copilot during the meeting to gain insights? I feel like the meetings, sometimes we leave the meetings and that's when our good ideas pop up. And so if we could try to capture some of those in real time, it would just save people time and energy, but it also make those meetings more effective. So maybe don't be afraid to use it with other people. It's not an isolated tool necessarily. That would be my.
Oh, nice.
If I had to pick one.
Nice. I like it. I added a bonus question.
Okay, good.
So how do we measure ROI and adoption, and how do we manage risk? Well, I think we've talked about managing risk. I think the ROI and adoption. So this is the main point of our assessment process. So if you want to go out and do that, I think it's interesting because you're going to start small, so don't have expectations that you're going to change your whole company in the next 2 months with AI. But again, if we take that 2-year mindset, what do we need to get through over 2 years? And so at a quarterly rate, how can we apply these things? What we run into is people are super excited to implement something, and then everybody's busy, and it's like, you know what? We have an hour a week for the team to meet to do this. But it's amazing what you can get done in an hour a week over a quarter. So it's how do we figure this out in a way that fits with everything else we're doing? And then as you start to do this, what can we build with AI that can start to take some of that workload off other people's plates? So now they have more time to put towards this to actually running the process, right? So our goal is to be the puppet master rather than the puppets on everything, right? So we want to guide the process and be smart about that. It gets into why we need more critical thinkers in our businesses to think about the process and how do we improve it, and to experiment with some of the things of like, do we want to do this or this? Can we do, rather than just following the process, how do we actually think about the best way to improve this to make more results? So how we measure that is to continue to do things like do our assessment quarterly. That's really the intention. So you can see where you were, see where you're at, understand the difference. You can look at the numbers of what you spent to do that and actually be able to kind of get some ROI on what you're doing. The other thing I'll say is your initial ROI is probably going to be fairly low. Let's say you start with, let's do a training class for a team, and now they're going to use ChatGPT. Okay, what is the payoff for that? Well, our expectation is that a person, if they spend most of their day on a computer, they should save probably an hour a day after going through our class. And if that's the case, that's actually still quite, I would say, a fairly high ROI over time. Now, where are they at 3 months later? I think that's one of the questions. We get some drop off, but actually less drop off than you might expect. But now you look at some of these processes as you start to build out workflows and agents, those can have like 10x, 20x, like they can be radical improvements for the money spent because they're not that hard to develop for something that might, reduce weeks of time every month. So there's ways to do that. The assessment's probably the number one way to do that. So on that note, let's get into prompt of the week.
Love it. I've got two. The first one is specifically for finance. And I think one of the biggest aha moments in class is when you add a role to your prompt. And this is a good example of that. We add a role when we're building custom instructions. It's just really first and front when we're thinking about creating a good prompt. So this goes for finance. Act as a small business finance coach. State your role right in the beginning. Using the line items below, propose a 90-day cash flow improvement plan with 1, quick wins in 7 days, 2, 30-day initiatives, 3, risks, and 4, a 1-page email I can send to my team. We do this all the time. We'll take a concept, a content, and whatever it is, and we'll convert it into all these different formats. And that, to me, you mentioned an hour a week, I think, or an hour a day. This is where you can really convert content to meet your needs of your audience or whoever it may be. So that's a great one.
So
give you some insights.
Can I stop you on that one? I have a question.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
What you did there is you set up your prompt and then you actually asked 4 questions in it. I feel like when we talk in class, our preferred method is you would ask question 1, then you would ask question 2, then and so you do each of them at one after the other, because do we get as good results if we ask all 4 questions up front?
Yes and no. This is where in class, I really try not to get into templates or formulas or an exact, because everybody's task is different than the next. But I agree with what you're saying. I do think I would have probably added into this, give me an overview or an outline, and then I like to do a deep dive into each. I think even just the user experience, if it spits back to you pages and pages of content, it's just overwhelming. So I agree. I think starting simple and building is a good methodology. But depending on those 4 questions, it may be a quick answer, or it may be its own kind of path that you go down and explore as well. So it really depends on the task. Um, but sometimes I like to lay it all out and just ask for an outline or a
Mhm.
summary to begin with. And then I am in control, right? Then I get to
Perfect.
steer what direction it goes in. Okay, prompt 2. This is also another opportunity to kind of mold and shape content that you want to create. Personalize a 120-word cold email to fill in the blank prospect role at fill in the blank company, referencing a recent event, show a 3-bullet value hypothesis, and a 1-click calendar ask. I mean, to be able to develop something like this that is aligned to what you want and what you need is game changer. Any thoughts on this one?
I love this, and actually I do this. So I think it's interesting. We use Pipedrive as our CRM, and I think it's really slick because I can actually have these AI calls set up, and then I can have it customized based on what we know about that contact or what we're working towards with that contact. So it's just really slick to have not not just email templates, but AI templates set up so I can now go say, hey, use this to build the email I'm going to send rather than having an actual hard coded email because it's all dynamic. So love it.
Yeah, and actually, I've been recommending people to kind of create a library of prompts. And now, if you go into Copilot, it's not a library, but it's called a gallery, and it allows you to save these prompts. And I have people who do client consults once a week, and they'll go into their prompt gallery and just click it 10 minutes before the consult, runs through their client information, and it's a great go-to prompt. And that to me is similar to this one, where you just want to save
Yep.
it and then use it when you need it, right? So
Yep.
it's reusable.
Yes.
Good, good. Well, the questions you're asking are all the right ones, and they're answerable. So treat AI like a 2-year marathon run in quarterly sprints. Pick one workflow, ship a pilot, and measure the minutes saved. Use the prompt of the week to A/B test your tools. Keep a human in the loop for anything customer facing or financial, and let outcomes, not hype, decide your next move.
Fantastic. So this has been a great show, and I just want to call out again. If you want to get started on this, probably the simple thing to do to figure out a plan is to go through our assessment. Um, and then, if you want to learn more, we do our training sessions. We have a deal for you. We would
Oh,
love the first person from any company gets into our one-on-one class, either our Copilot or GPT class for free. So if you want to sign up, I don't know that this will be the case forever, but right now that's the deal. So if you want to come to we do our ChatGPT class. It is 9 to 4 in person, and we do that in the Twin Cities area. Reach out and we can connect you with that. And if you want to bring additional people, there's a cost to that, but first person is free from your organization. We also do it online. Our Copilot one tends to be 6 weeks, 1 hour a week online. So it's usually over either 11 o'clock to noon or noon to 1 Central Time. And we would love to have you in any of those classes and get you a foundation. If you are on your team trying to think about how to implement this, this is a great way to get started because number one, you're going to meet other people and see how they're thinking about this and what they're doing. But you're also going to learn a lot from our trainers about how to actually implement our whole goal is it's a very hands-on. Bring your computer, you will be using it, and you will actually get into many use cases over those classes and actually take this back and be able to apply it. So um, it's been a great session, and hopefully these questions are useful. It's definitely what we're hearing out there in the market. So if you have additional questions for us, reach out. We'd love to include them in the future or get your question answered.
fantastic. Well, thank you as always for listening to the conversation. And if today helped, follow and share it with a leader who needs practical AI, not buzzwords. With that being said, we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being part of the conversation with Model Mind AI. Until next time, keep leading, keep learning, and stay curious.